They thought Deathworlders were monsters, until humans showed what monsters really are. The Galactic Council had seen many species rise and fall across the stars, but none quite like the Vrikari. When first contact was established, 3 cycles ago, the assembled delegates had recoiled in horror at the sight of the towering chitinous beings. 8 feet of armored carapace, razor-sharp claws, and mandibles that could snap steel. The Vrikari were the living embodiment of every civilized species' nightmare. Ambassador Zethkri observed the emergency session from his booth, his arms folded across his chest as he listened to the heated debate below. The familiar blue glow of the translation matrix hummed softly as dozens of species voiced their concerns. "They are abominations," screeched Representative Kulain, her feathered crest flared in agitation. "No species that evolved on a Class 12 death world should be allowed into civilized space." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Tyrellian delegates' crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy. The atmospheric pressure on their homeworld would crush most of our species instantly. The gravity is 12 times standard. And the predators? He shuddered, causing his crystal facets to ring like wind chimes. The documentation shows creatures that would make our worst nightmares seem pleasant. Zethkri had seen the reports. Vraktos Prime was indeed a hellscape by galactic standards, a world where evolution had taken a decidedly violent turn. Every creature on the planet seemed designed for one purpose: killing. The Vrikari had clawed their way to the top of the food chain through sheer brutality, and it showed in every aspect of their being. The debate raged for hours until a new voice cut through the chaos. "Perhaps we should hear from someone who has actually worked with them." All eyes turned to the human delegation. Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped forward, her small frame dwarfed by the massive chamber. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for only 50 standard years, and many still viewed them with curiosity, rather than respect. "The Vrikari have been our trading partners for 2 years now," Chen continued, her voice steady despite the attention of 300 species focused on her. "In that time, we've found them to be honorable, logical, and surprisingly, gentle." The chamber erupted in disbelief. Representative Kulan's feathers practically bristled with indignation. "Gentle? Have you seen their claws, their teeth? They are monsters." Chen's expression remained calm, but Zethkri noticed something shift in her eyes, a hardness that hadn't been there before. "With respect, Representative, I think you may be confused about what monsters actually look like." She activated her personal holographic display, and images began to fill the air above the assembly floor. The first showed a Vrikari nursery, where the fearsome warriors were tenderly caring for their young, their deadly claws delicately adjusting blankets and feeding tiny larvae. The Vrikari evolved in a harsh environment, yes, but that environment taught them the value of cooperation and protection of the innocent. Their entire social structure is built around the concept of guardianship. The next image showed Vrikari, construction crews working on a space station, their powerful forms moving with surprising grace and precision. "They may look frightening to us, but they've never started a war. They've never committed genocide. They've never enslaved another species." Zethkri felt a chill run down his spine as Chen's tone grew colder. "They've never strip-mined a planet to extinction. They've never turned sentient beings into commodities. They've never built weapons designed specifically to cause maximum suffering before death." The images changed again, and Zethkri recognized the horrific scenes from various galactic conflicts throughout history. The Jextai slave markets, the Hellurian bioweapons used on Kepler 442b, the mining operations that had rendered 17 worlds uninhabitable. "You call them monsters because they have claws and armor," Chen continued, her voice now carrying an edge that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. "But they evolved those traits to survive on a world that was trying to kill them every day. They are the way they are because their environment shaped them to be protectors." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembly. "We humans didn't evolve on a death world. We evolved on a garden world. Blue skies, gentle rains, abundant resources. And yet," the holographic display shifted to show human history. Wars spanning continents, weapons that could end civilizations, experiments that defied every moral boundary the galaxy had established. We are the ones who weaponized atoms to create extinction-level events. We are the ones who developed psychological torture as an art form. We are the ones who looked at a perfectly habitable planet and found ways to make it uninhabitable through pure negligence and greed. The chamber had fallen completely silent. Even the omnipresent hum of the translation matrix seemed muted. The Vakari may look like monsters to you, Chen said, her voice now barely above a whisper but somehow carrying to every corner of the massive space. But they have never done anything as monstrous as what my species accomplished with nothing but soft skin and small teeth. She turned to face the Vakari delegation directly. Ambassador Ketvar, all 8 feet and razor-sharp glory of him, inclined his massive head respectfully. When we first met the Vakari, they were terrified of us, Chen revealed. Not because we were bigger or stronger. Obviously we're not. They were terrified because their historians had studied our species before contact. They knew what we were capable of. They called us the soft destroyers, beings who could end worlds with a smile. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Zethakri found himself looking at the human delegation with new eyes. These small, seemingly fragile beings who had integrated so seamlessly into galactic society. What darkness did they carry within themselves? But that's exactly why we understand each other so well, Chen continued, her expression softening slightly. The Vakari and humans both know what it means to be feared for what others think we might do, rather than judged for what we choose to do. She gestured toward Ambassador Ketvar, who stepped forward with surprising grace despite his bulk. In our time working together, the Vakari's translated voice resonated through the chamber. We have learned that true strength is not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to create. The humans taught us that monsters are not defined by their appearance but by their actions. Representative Kulin's feathers had settled, and she looked uncertain for the first time since the session began. But surely their capacity for violence is exactly what makes their choice for peace so meaningful, Chen interrupted gently. The Vakari could conquer half the galaxy if they chose to. Their physical capabilities are beyond question, but they choose to build instead of destroy. They choose to protect instead of prey upon the weak. She looked around the assembly one final time. Perhaps instead of judging species by how frightening they appear, we should judge them by how they treat those who cannot fight back. By that measure, I can think of no species more qualified for council membership than the Vakari. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Later, as the delegations filed out of the chamber, Zethkri approached the human ambassador. That was illuminating, he said carefully. Chen smiled, and for a moment, Zethkri caught a glimpse of something ancient and weary in her eyes. The universe is full of monsters, Ambassador. The trick is learning to recognize which ones choose not to be. As she walked away, Zethkri found himself wondering if the galaxy truly understood what it had welcomed into its midst 50 years ago. The humans had just advocated successfully for the inclusion of a species that others feared as monsters. But perhaps, he thought with a shiver, they had done so because they recognized something familiar in the Vakari's struggle. The burden of being judged not for who they chose to be, but for what they were capable of becoming. In the end, the most terrifying monsters were often those who looked the most harmless, and the greatest protectors were often those who appeared the most frightening. The galaxy, Zethkri realized, was about to learn this lesson firsthand.